Talk Show Sports on YouTube. We got our first series, the division breakdowns. Now, we're starting with the NFC North, and last year they sent 3 teams to the playoffs. A lot of people call this the best division in football, so we're going to break it down. We're going to predict each team's record, where they finish in the division, and we'll talk some sports betting lines for our sports bettors out there. Now, coming in at number 4, we got the Minnesota Vikings. Let's go in there and predict their schedule. So, week 1, they got the Bears, Ben Johnson, Caleb Williams. It's going to be the most marketed show on earth. You know, it's in Chicago, prime time. I got the Bears. They start out 0-1. Then week 2, they're going to pick up a win versus the Falcons. Week 3, they're going to lose to Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase in Cincinnati. Then week 4 and 5, they're going to beat the Steelers and beat the Browns. So they start the year 3-2, but then things are going to get rough after this bye. Week 7, they're going to lose to the Eagles. Week 8, the Chargers they're going to lose to. Then week 9, they lose to the Lions. And week 10, the Ravens. They'll bounce back week 11 and beat the Bears. Week 12, they'll lose to the Packers. Week 13, they'll beat the Seahawks. Then weeks 14 and 15, they'll lose to the Commanders and Cowboys. Week 16, they'll bounce back and beat the Giants. And they'll finish the year at 2 losses in the division, getting swept by both the Lions and the Packers. Now, if that's how it goes, we're obviously taking the under on the 8.5. And the big storyline for the Vikings is, can J.J. McCarthy really run this offense? Now, I don't want to sound like a hater for Michigan State, but J.J. McCarthy is just not good. So if he has Kevin O'Connell has once again magically turned a mid-quarterback into a playable quarterback, I have to give him his flowers. But I'll have to see it before I believe it. At number 3 in the NFC North, we got the Bears. Now they got all the hype. They got Ben Johnson, Dennis Allen, Luther Burden, Loveland. You know, they got all these young pieces, but it's going to take time, you know. As I said,
Rome wasn't built in a day. You ladies all right?
They start the year off week 1 versus Minnesota. We already had them getting a win. Week 2, they're going to follow that up with a loss to the Lions. Week 3, they're going to lose to the Cowboys. And week 4, they'll beat the Raiders. So they'll be 2-2 going to the week 5 bye. And week 6, they will lose to the Commanders again. Then week 7, they will beat the Saints. Week 8, they'll lose to the Ravens. Week 9, they'll lose to the Bengals. Week 10, they'll get a win versus the Giants. Week 11, they'll lose to the Vikings. Week 12, they'll beat the Steelers. And then in week 13, they'll lose to the Eagles, obviously. Week 14, they'll lose to the Packers. Week 15, they'll beat the Browns. Week 16, they'll beat the Packers. Week 17, they'll lose to the Niners. And week 18, they will beat the Bears. That comes in at 8-9. The line is 8.5. I'm not touching it. Now, if you're a Bears fan, let me tell you something.
Swallow your pride, or soon you'll be eating something far worse than shit.
Swallow your pride. Do not bet on the Bears to win the NFC North, because they will not win the NFC North. With that being said, the storyline is, what will Ben Johnson make of the weaker RB room that he has in Chicago? Obviously, they're going to try to have more of a passing attack and more air it out for Caleb versus Goff, but the comparisons will definitely be prominent. And then it's the Ben Johnson era, you know. Let's see how the offense looks. I wonder if they had the same swagger that the Lions have with Dan Campbell. You know, Ben Johnson seems like he might run his team a little bit differently. So at number 2, we have the Green Bay Packers, but this is a good point to talk about the odds of who actually is going to win the North. Right now, you can get the Lions at plus 140 on DraftKings, and you can get the Packers at plus 280 on Caesars. I do think there is some value on the Packers here to win the division. The Lions should have some sort of fall off with Ben Johnson leaving and Jared Goff being Jared Goff. Now, I still think the Lions should win the division, but I do think there is some value on the Packers plus 280. But let's hop right into the Packers schedule and predict it game by game. So, week 1, we have them losing to the Lions at home. Tough scene for them. Week 2, they're going to get a win versus the Commanders. Week 3, they'll beat the Browns. Week 4, they'll lose to the Cowboys on the road going into the bye at 2-2. Coming out of the bye week 6 and losing to the Bengals. Week 7 and 8, they'll bounce back and beat the Cardinals and Steelers. Week 9 versus the Panthers, they'll actually win. But week 10, they'll lose to the Eagles. Week 11, we got a win versus the Giants. Week 12, we have a win versus the Vikings. Week 13, we have a win versus the Lions. Week 14, we have a loss versus the Bears. A win versus the Bears. Week 15, a loss versus the Broncos. Week 16, a loss versus the Bears. Week 17, a loss versus the Ravens. And Week 18, a win versus the Vikings. That brings the Packers out at 10-7. Sorry, I didn't mix that up. Week 16, it doesn't matter. Week 14 to 16, I think the Packers and Bears split this year. I do think the ownership is over between the Packers and the Bears. Now, for some lines, I do like the Packers to make the playoffs here. I just see the value. I think with Jacobs and just with their system, their scheme, they'll be pretty consistent in the NFC at minus 135. And then the biggest storyline is, will someone step up and be the wide receiver one? You know, I know that Jaden Reed has the potential and skill to be the one, but they seem like they don't want to do that. So
I was bitten by a radioactive spider, and for the last 22 years, I thought I was the one and only Spider-Man.
Okay, listen to this one last time, yeah? For real, listen. My name is Miles Morales. I was bitten by a radioactive spider, and for like 2 days, I've been the one and only Spider-Man.
We'll see if Matthew Golden can come in and actually be the one. I think it's something that Jordan Love can benefit from. I think he's a little overrated, and he needs to find a guy like when he doesn't really go. I won't speak too much on Jordan Love. And coming in at number 1, we got the Lions going for the three-peat of the NFC North. Now, yes, they're losing Ben Johnson, but they're only going to give the ball to Gibbs more. Jameson Williams is going to take a step up. Amon-Ra is a top 5 receiver in the NFL. The Lions aren't going anywhere. Let's go through on their season predictions. Week 1 and Week 2, we got wins versus the Packers and Bears. Week 3, Lamar's too much for them to contain. They take a loss. Week 4, they beat the Browns. Week 5, they beat Cincinnati, the only team in the North to beat the Bengals. And then Week 6, on the road, they lose to the Chiefs. Week 7, they also lose to the Bucks, going into the Week 8 bye at 4-3. Week 9, they bounce back and beat the Vikings. Week 10, they get their get-backs versus the Commanders. Week 11, they lose to the Eagles. Week 12, they beat the Giants. Week 13, they lose to the Packers. Week 14, they beat the Cowboys. Week 15, they beat the Rams. Week 16, they beat the Steelers. Week 17, they beat the Vikings. And Week 18, they lose to the Bears. That pops them out at 11-6, right on that 10.5 win total. If the line was 9.5, I would love the over. 10.5, I'm a little skeptical about it, but I did just project 11 wins. They will make the playoffs, that's for sure, but I don't love the line at minus 230. I think if you're going to hit any of these Lions props, it's going to be for them to win the North at plus 140. And I do think there is a chance that the Lions can win the NFC, but they might need some help. That's it for our NFC North breakdown. Make sure to subscribe. First video on Talk Show Sports. It's pretty fire. I hope you liked it. We'll be back next week.
Who's the best player in the country?
Is it the media or me?